Hello, I'm Mary Wilder than you are, and I've been here since 1955, so I'm older than some of the ones you've seen. But this is Bible Bytes from Montevilla Baptist Church. Okay, we're going to look at one of my favorite Psalms. Now, it's hard to pick a favorite Psalm, but one of my favorites is Psalm 139 because that talks about God's omniscience, His omnipotence, and all of that stuff. But we won't use any of those big words. We'll just look at what he says. David says, "O Lord, you've searched me, you've known me, you know when I sit down, you know when I stand up. You understand my thoughts. You have surrounded my path, my public life, and my lying down, my private resting existence. And you're acquainted with all of my ways. There's not a word in my mouth, but you, Lord, you know it entirely. And you've surrounded me behind and before, and you've laid your hand on me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It's high. I can't attain unto that." And that speaks of God's perception. God knows you and me, and that's such a comfort. You know, you have thoughts that, ooh, you wouldn't put that on Facebook. But God knows those thoughts, and if they're sinful thoughts, you can ask Him right there to forgive you. One of my favorite books on prayer, the guy says, God knows your thoughts, your sins, and He waits to see what you'll say to Him about them. And that's prayer. So God knows everything about you and me, and so you could tell Him anything. And that's a wonderful freedom in prayer. And that's a testimony to God's omniscience. He knows everything. You can't hide from Him, so don't even try. And then he goes on to say that, where shall I go from your spirit? Or where shall I run away from your presence? If I ascend up into heaven, you're there. And if I make my bed in hell or the place of the dead, you're there. And if I take the wings of the morning and fly away, you're there. And if I live in the farthest parts of the sea, you're there. And even there, your hand will lead me, your right hand will hold me. And if I say, surely the darkness will cover me. Even the night is light around me. Yes, the darkness doesn't hide from you, but the night shines as the day. The darkness and the light are both alike to you. And that's speaking of God's protection, of His presence. He's there. No matter where I go, no matter how I tried to hide, oh, look at what I've done. Oh, I got to hide that from God. Don't bother, because the darkness is light to Him, and the darkness and the light are both alike to you. For you have possessed me. You've covered me in my mother's womb. Now, what is a more sacred, quiet, hidden place than inside your mommy before you're born? But he says, I'm told that word, you covered me, is a word meaning I was embroidered as a tapestry. You put me all together. You made me a beautiful thing. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And I'll tell you, that is so true of how that baby goes from two cells that are in two different places, only half of what they ought to be. They come together, they combine, and instead of throwing each other off like foreign protein, they combine and they start to multiply. And there's 2, and then there's 4, and then there's 16, and there I can't compute anymore. And you resulted from that, and he put you all together, fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that I know quite well. My substance wasn't hidden from you when I was made in secret, when I was curiously wrought or put together, woven together in the dark parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance when it was still, my being was not perfected yet. And in your book, all the days of my life were written, when as yet there were none of them. And so God knows when you're born. He knows how long you're going to live. He knows what you're going to do. And he knows when he's going to call you home. So, I mean, he's got it all figured out. How precious are your thoughts to me, O God. How great is the sum of them. If I should count them up, your thoughts toward me, I couldn't even number them. They'd be more in number than the sand. But when I wake, I'm still with you. So, asleep or awake, formed wonderfully in the womb, born, growing, I'm with you. And you're with me. And that speaks of God's presence with each of us. And then his idea turns toward the wicked, towards the one that don't acknowledge God, don't know him. And he says words here that are really kind of hard to understand. He said, surely you'll kill the wicked, Lord. Depart from me, you bloody men. I mean, he's just talked about how wonderful is God's knowledge, and here he talks about killing the wicked. Well, he says they speak against you, and your enemies take your name in vain. They don't want any part of you, Lord. And so I hate them too. And I'm grieved with those that rebel against you. I hate them with a perfect hatred, with bitterness. I count them my enemies. In other words, I'll have no part of them, Lord, no part of those that take your name in vain, that rebel against you, that, no, that's not me. And he goes on to say, search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me, and know my thoughts, know my anxious thoughts. Well, now, what did he say at the first of it? He said, you know me, you know my thoughts, you know the way I take my public life, you know when I'm resting quietly, my private life, you know all of that. And so how come he said, search me, O God, and know my heart, try me, and know my thoughts? Well, it's because he wants God to know that he's in agreement with who God is and what God does. And he's saying, you've said that you do all this, and do it, Lord. Know me, search me, try me, know my thoughts. So he's showing agreement with who God is and what God does. And then he says, and see if there's any wicked way in me, because he's just talked about what God ought to do to the wicked. Kill them, Lord. They don't want any part of you. And David says, you be sure that there's no wicked way in me, and lead me in your way, Lord, in the way everlasting. And so in this psalm, God tells us that Uh, he loves us so much. His love is so great that we can't get out of his presence. We can't get away from his paths, his ways. And we can't get out from under his protection. And we can't escape the grasp of his hand on us. And David would say, nor do we want to. Search me, Lord. Guide me. And see if there's any wicked way in me. And lead me in the way everlasting. So that's just a little hint of what this psalm is. And I'll bet you if you read it, you could find a lot more of who God is and what he does and how he loves you, and that there's no way you can escape him because he made you. And I find that so incredible that he would take the DNA from this cell and combine it with the DNA from that cell and make you. And there's no way you can get out of his presence, escape his hand. And so, search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts. And see if there's any wicked way in me. And lead me in the way everlasting. So, you read that and you get blessed too. And maybe you'll see why this is, well, one of my favorite psalms. So there we are.